Welcome to another video. In this one I'm going to replace the battery in a Motorola Droid Turbo smartphone. I start by dusting it off, then I apply this eye opener from iFixit, which is supposed to help loosen up the adhesive that's holding the back cover onto the phone. Then I put a towel on top just to keep the heat in, and I give it a few minutes, and then I take everything off and get to work. Step 2 is to use the plastic opening tool to pry off the rear case. Basically, this removal tool goes in and allows you to pull up the bezel on the rear case and pull it up and over the phone so that it will come off. Now, after having done this once, I would recommend starting this process on the button side to avoid pushing the power button when you're pushing down on the phone. I'd also like to try this process by putting the phone on its back, because as you'll see, trying to hold the phone up in the air causes me to accidentally snap the back of the case back on the phone several times. So again, you want to start on the side here, removing the back of the case on the button side, and then work your way around to the top. You won't be able to snap the bottom off in this way, so from one side to the top to the next side is the process. You might want to take the SIM card out by removing the volume buttons. This will prevent you from damaging the buttons. And the back will come off, you just have to be patient. There's just enough space in there to get around, to get in between the power button and the volume buttons. And pop that snap off. Like I said, holding the phone from the sides caused the case to snap back into place a few times here. Alright, and then the case is adhered to the phone, and in between there is sandwiched a piece of rubber with adhesive on both sides, and also the wireless charging coil. According to the instructions, the coil may stick to the back of the case as opposed to the phone, and in that case you want to be careful because you don't want to tear the connection to the coil. I did this process nice and slow because I wasn't sure how things were going to come apart. Just apply nice, constant pressure, and the adhesive will give up and come apart for you. And there it is. You can see the rubber part is flexible and it still holds the case in place. It has two places where it attaches to the phone, one over the wireless charging coil, and the other, a little hammerhead shape, attaches directly to the battery underneath the wireless charging coil. I take this opportunity to remove some dust and some grime, and I'm using isopropyl alcohol on a Q-tip. Step 3 is to remove the mid-frame bezel. This is just a piece of what feels like nylon that fills in some space here. Then you have to remove 4 Torx screws, securing the mid-frame plate. The next step is to remove the mid-frame, and you want to be careful here and not try to just pry it off, but rather you want to insert something narrow into these holes on the side and push out and up. That will release these small T-clips that are around the side. Then you can pry the mid-frame up from the bottom and it will come right off, and be careful not to drop it like I do here. And now would be a good time to make sure that the phone is off, since we've been turning it on accidentally by pushing down on the buttons. Step 6 is to unplug the battery from the phone. Now we remove this rubber interposer with adhesive on both sides. And then you want to unstick the wireless charging coil and fold it out of the way. It's stuck to the battery pretty well with adhesive. And there's a little device that's kind of a satellite of the charging coil that you have to free as well. I tried using the iFixit eye opener here to loosen up the adhesive attaching the wireless charging coils to the battery, but I think that at this point the eye opener was too cool to make any difference. I've also read that you can use the plastic card tool that you get in an iFixit repair kit in order to get underneath this charging coil and free the adhesive. I don't know if it's good to bend the coil so much, so maybe avoid doing that. But with gentle, even pressure, you will free the adhesive and the charging coil will come off. Now I free this little thing. I would guess this is some kind of sensor. And finally, we can see the battery that we're trying to replace. The battery itself is held in place with more adhesive, and you can use your spudger to get underneath there and free it from the phone PCB. Just be patient, more even pressure, and it'll come free. And heat also helps. mild heat. Alright, it's finally time to unwrap the new battery. And here's the new battery next to the old one for comparison. Now I didn't want things to move around in the case, so an extra step that I did was adding double-sided adhesive tape to the back of the battery and the front, as we'll see. This adhesive goes on pretty easy. After having done this once, I would recommend using that same plastic card tool I mentioned earlier to stick the tape down to the battery to make it easier for you to go in and remove this backing layer from the tape. So basically what I'm doing here is making sure that the double-sided tape sticks to the battery and then removing the backing layer. And the way I like to remove this backing layer is I like to use the back of my tweezers, and that way I can get a long grab and pull the backing tape off. Just like that. Same thing here. Be careful not to remove the double-sided tape itself, but just the backing layer, and keep the tape down. Same thing here. A few times for me, the tape was not stuck very well to the battery, and so the tape itself came off with the backing layer. But I eventually got it all off. This should be enough adhesive to hold the battery in place in the phone and keep it from rattling around. And then, like some repair manuals say, replacement is the reversal of removal, and that saves them a lot of time writing how to reverse the steps, but I'll show you exactly what I did in this case. There's some slack around the battery, and I tried to just center it in the context of where it'll be sitting. But if any of the other parts don't fit back in, you may have to move the battery slightly. Now make sure you roll the cable over from bottom to top of the phone before trying to connect the connector to the phone. It refuses to go in backwards. Now because I want the charging coil to stick to the battery, if I ever have to take this apart again, I put some more double-sided tape here between the battery and the charging coil. And I use my tweezers to remove the backing layer. Then the mid-frame goes back in. Snapping the top in first. You can see the little T-shaped clip on the edge. And then the sides, and then it's in place. Then the mid-frame bezel should fit around the battery. I was second guessing mine, but this piece just fills in space. Then we replace the screws that hold the mid-frame to the phone. Again, 4 Torx screws. Then this piece of rubber with adhesive on the top and bottom. And it has a little key to help you line it up. And then you want to make sure that it's stuck to both the charging coil and the battery. Then I can put the back of the case back on. But first I decided to take this opportunity to use some more isopropyl alcohol and a Q-tip to remove some more grime that got in the crevices here. And you can see that I accidentally touched up against an ink blob that I'm sure is designed to allow someone to determine if the phone has been wet. And you can see I smeared the blue ink right here. This phone is way out of warranty, so they'll just have to excuse me for doing that. Then the bottom of the rear case goes on first, and then the sides, and then the top, and it just snaps into place. Again, this is the first time I've done this, so I wanted to take my time and make sure that I have everything snapped into place. The case snaps in pretty easy. Just go around and make sure that there aren't any gaps left. Then I'll put the SIM card back in. If it doesn't go all the way in easily, try turning it around. Then there was a little bit more dust here on the baffles for the camera. And there was a little spot on the nylon weave on the back of the case. Then I just go around and make sure that there's no more dust that I can remove. Clean out the ear hole. It's interesting that these near-infrared lights that detect whether the phone is up against your head show up on my cameras here, and you can see 3 of them. And there you have it, one phone with a brand new battery. Thanks for watching.